Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
My name is Ginny. You can call me Bad Girl if you like. That's what the neighborhood kids called me. I have a long story to tell you. I was the eldest of 5 siblings. My mother died of illness, and my father was crippled in a car accident. He couldn't walk, and he had to use a wheelchair. Seeing my siblings suffer from hunger and poverty was a constant sight at home. My father was depressed. Our neighbors helped us a lot, but I was constantly worried what would happen if they ever stopped, so I decided to try and find a job. I knew it wouldn't be easy because I was only 15. Who'd want to hire a 15-year-old? Though I was apprehensive and lacking confidence, I made up my mind to get a job. I went to many places: clothing shops, flower shops, grocery stores. The answer was the same: we're not hiring at the moment. One day, feeling down, I was walking aimlessly with no destination in mind, when suddenly I found myself near a hospital. On an impulse, I entered. I saw a nurse, but she seemed too gloomy to talk, so I looked around and found another nurse who looked a bit kinder. She noticed me and asked if I needed any help. I told her that I was looking for a job. Any job. I'd even mop and clean. She felt sympathy for me and told me not to worry. Then she went into the manager's office. I was worried. Was I in trouble? A minute later, she called me in to meet the manager. He seemed very kind, and he quietly asked for my name. I told him it was Ginny. He told me that Martha, the kind nurse who was helping me, told him that I was looking for any job available. He said he had a job for me, but he was concerned that it might be a problem. I felt a pang of fear and asked what the problem was. He said that I would have to work night shifts. That was it? I felt so relieved. I immediately agreed, and he said that he liked my enthusiasm and that I could start tomorrow. I was so happy. I returned home quickly, hugged my siblings, and kissed my father's hands. I told them everything about my new job. My father looked at me sadly and said that I was too young to have to bear this responsibility. I told him that it was okay and that I could deal with it. When I went to work at the hospital every night, there was a gang of young kids who were always loitering around the neighborhood. I hoped they wouldn't bother me, but my hopes were in vain. They made fun of me every time I passed them. I never told my family about this, though. I began work as a cleaning lady, but due to my diligence and intelligence, I was able to learn a little bit about nursing. So, I was able to get promoted, first to nursing assistant, then to a nurse. My colleagues supported me a lot. Everything was almost perfect, except for the neighborhood gang that was always bothering me and calling me Ginny the Bad Girl. I wished they would just go away and leave me alone. Then, one day, a miracle happened. While I was working at the hospital, the neighborhood bullies came in, carrying their leader. He was badly injured. His whole body was covered in blood. They were shouting for someone to help them, and when they saw me, they pleaded with me to save him. I worked quickly with the other staff. His condition was serious. He had been in a terrible motorcycle accident. The staff and I worked feverishly to stabilize his condition and treat him. After stabilizing him, I was exhausted. Suddenly, I felt someone coming close. It was the gang. They apologized for making fun of me and asked me to forgive them. They said they didn't know that I worked at a hospital. I smiled and told them it was okay, and that I considered them to be my brothers and sisters. Another nurse went to them and told them that their friend was okay now. I was so happy that my problem was solved. They called me over to talk to their leader. He had tears in his eyes and told me that he was so sorry and asked me to forgive him. He was so sincere that I was moved. I gently asked him to be quiet and get some rest. As I was walking away, he called me and thanked me again. After that incident, the manager called me in and praised me for saving the patient's life that day. I was still a long way from achieving my dreams, but I had a good head start, and the neighborhood gang began calling me the Mercy Angel. Hi there, I am Matilda, and I'm 24 years old. My story starts just before Thanksgiving, when I decided to visit and spend a few days with my grandparents. Their house was in an old neighborhood, near a graveyard, that people only whispered about in small circles. But I wasn't interested in all the rumors. I liked to visit graveyards, to enjoy their peaceful landscapes and time-honored history. I was always welcome at my grandparents' house. My granny prepared me the chocolate drink I like. Grandpa baked me the biscuits with his magic recipe. We spent all day talking, laughing, and playing. My father was an archaeologist. He was crazy about antiques, so he had a room like a small museum. He collected a lot of things that were rare in that room. We used to sit in this room, and my grandfather would tell me stories about every antique, except for one painting of an old woman. I used to ask him about it, but he never told me what it was. As I was sleeping in the room, which was next to our little museum, I heard whispering. I opened the door and looked around. It was coming from my father's museum. I searched around the room to find out the source of the voice. I couldn't believe it. The eyes and mouth in the old painting were moving, and I heard, "There's danger in the backyard." I ran, frightened, to my grandparents' room. My grandfather asked me what happened, and I told him. I thought he would mock me, but he brought his gun and went quickly to the backyard. He told me if he didn't return within 15 minutes, I should call the police. Suddenly, I heard shots. I thought that something bad happened to my grandfather, but he entered the house and told us that the thieves ran away. They still wouldn't tell me about the painting, but I don't think I needed an explanation anymore. In legends and horror stories, ghosts are typically spirits of the dead, those who suffered greatly in their lives, that when their time comes, they choose to linger in this world, to sow hatred and chaos among the living. Do you believe this, that there are vengeful spirits living among us, right here, right now? I do, and my story will tell you why. I'm Martha. I'm 19 years old, and I have a twin sister, Caroline. She wasn't just my sister, but we were best friends and subsequent partners in crime. We suffered a miserable life because we lived in poverty. Our parents were very poor, despite belonging to a rich family. Grandpa, on my dad's side of the family, worked in the petroleum industry, where he made lots of investments and projects. And fortunately, he had a lot of enemies too, many of whom were from Mom's side of the family. Dad was the middle son, but he assumed responsibility for Grandpa's work because he was very competent and capable. Similarly, Mom became responsible for her father's work. She did her best to avoid conflict between her side of the family and Dad's side, so that they could work together peacefully. It was at this point, I believe, that vengeful spirits must have come into play. My parents had loved each other since their childhood, but they didn't tell their families about it. In the past, both my grandpas were once friends and partners. They worked together within the same company, but they later became enemies and split the company into two. Both families hated each other that day forth. All of them, except for my parents. Mom's uncles took over her company and fired her. Dad couldn't bear to see Mom in this situation, so he told his dad that he was going to marry her. So his father made him choose between my mother and the company with all the power and wealth that came with it. To Grandpa's chagrin, Dad chose Mom over everything else. And so, they got married and lived together with Grandma. They faced life's problems without any support from anyone. Grandpa felt betrayed by Dad and disowned him. Then, Carolyn and I were born. Dad did his best to make us happy and give us everything we needed. Grandma told us about our family's history and how both our parents had been cut off from their families out of sheer greed and betrayal. It felt a bit unfair, but this was our life now. Then, one day, we heard Dad speaking on the phone, with Mom standing beside him, and they were both acting very nervous. He told her to take care of us, and then he left the house and never came back. Mom never told us where he went or why he left. Sometime after that, Grandma passed away. Our situation was getting worse. We thought we had to do something to help Mom. Maybe we were being influenced by those vengeful spirits I mentioned. But either way, Carolyn and I made our decision to go over to the dark side. We decided to steal, rob, defraud. We were smart enough. Together, we could definitely pull it off. We began with our neighbor, very wealthy, but very cheap. We figured she must be keeping her money somewhere in the house, since she didn't believe in leaving a dime in the bank's care and was completely convinced that they would steal her money. Lucky for us, I guess. And we were right. We infiltrated her house when she was away and found a load of money stashed away under a loose tile on the floor. Took some time to find, but we got it. When we got home, The house was completely deserted. Mom wasn't there. Her clothes were all gone from the wardrobe. We were on our own now. We began exploiting jewelry shop owners. We would pretend to be a wealthy customer and tell the owner that we wanted to take the jewelry home to show our mom and get her opinion. We would drug hotel owners and put all the money in their safe into a bag, then scream and call for help, saying that the owner had just collapsed, creating a diversion and disappearing in the crowd. We were getting quite good at it. Our wealth slowly grew day by day. Mom called, every now and then, to check that we were fine on our own. Of course, she knew nothing about our work, or what we were doing to survive. Our ultimate goal was to earn a lot of money and run away to another country to start a new life. One evening, I was with my friends, and I met a guy named Craig. He was rich, but somehow seemed different than all the people we robbed. Later I found out, to my surprise, that he was our cousin, the grandson of the man that had taken everything away from my mother and fired her. Unsure of what to do, I told Carolyn what I knew. She went ecstatic. She told me that this was our chance to take back everything, the company, the money that belonged to us. But for the first time, we didn't quite agree. Craig was nothing like his father. He wasn't greedy. He was kind and gentle. He often told me that money was a curse if it meant living alone away from people that we care about and cherish. I made up my mind, and I told Carolyn that I couldn't be a part of our evil scheming anymore, and I wanted out. And so I left her and went to live on my own. At this point, I had no idea what Carolyn was up to. In the meantime, Craig was negotiating a deal that would earn his company a lot of profit. He told me to come visit at the company, and then we would go out for dinner. I accepted happily. When I arrived at his company, I sensed someone behind me. Then, suddenly a hand pressed a handkerchief over my mouth, and I passed out. When I woke up, I found Craig unconscious beside me. To the side, I could see his safe was wide open. Papers were scattered everywhere, and in my hand was the key to the safe. Then the police arrived, found the safe key in my hand, and accused me of being a thief. I told them that I had been drugged unconscious, just like Craig. The police officer looked inside my bag and found a bottle of chloroform. I was shocked, to say the least. I couldn't understand what had happened. They took me downstairs and tried to wake up Craig. At about that time, a woman in a black wig came over to me and said, "Martha, you betrayed me." It was Carolyn. I couldn't believe that she framed me. Then she left. Her betrayal hurt me deeply. A part of my brain told me that I had betrayed her first, but that doesn't matter now. When I get out of prison, someday, I resolve to get my revenge on her. We were no longer sisters. Just as we had been betrayed by our families before us, we were now locked into yet another circle of family betrayal. Only it was more personal and closer to home this time. Were they truly vengeful spirits influencing us? I think so. What about you?